Good morning. I'm Joey, only Caribbean Weather Dude. We're going to take a look at Hurricane Milton this morning. And the reason why we're doing that here in this channel is because I have a lot of people who've been following me for a long time, and they come to me for weather information. If you're in Florida and you see this, I mean, this is good information, but I'm sure there's a lot of people nearby that will have better information as towards in terms of evacuation orders and things like that. So we're really not looking to look at the social situation, what's going on in Florida right now. We're just really looking at some hurricane data and trying to relay that to people here in British Columbia that really have never experienced a hurricane like this. So they have lots of questions and want to know. I'm that guy that they come to for answers. I'm Joey, only Caribbean Weather Dude. Welcome to the show this morning. Yeah, usually only forecast for British Columbia, but when you get big weather events like this, it's like, I got to talk about it. I want to talk about it. People have questions. They all want to know things. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about Hurricane Milton and what we know and what we don't know so far today on Tuesday, the 9th of, no, it's the 8th. I don't even know what day it is, and I'm going to give you information that could save people's lives. Yeah, that doesn't look good on you. This is the bad news show, so let's go. There it is. This is bad news. My God.
Falling out right now.
Anything could happen. Get on! Wow. I'll watch the video later. They dry up in this. I've only got 1 week left with this agreement with these sponsors. Really great sponsors. Tim, really awesome guy. And just want to throw this out there, even though it's not a BC forecast today, that still I can't thank enough the support of Wildfire Floods and Chaos Communications podcast right here in British Columbia. So thank you very much. Check this out. It's at communicationspodcast.ca. Really great podcast. Lots of information. Lots of things that will explain to you what happens in crises. And it's looking like we're going to have Tim from that podcast, the information officer, Tim himself, on the meteorological report next week, Thursday. So look forward to that. And I'm not having him on because he's a sponsor. We're inviting Tim onto the show because he's an extremely interesting guy who's done a lot of great work. This is what it's like inside Hurricane Milton. We're a ship right now. Oh man, absolutely crazy. Some of these gusts that they recorded 30 miles. So let's have a look right now at the public advisory for Hurricane Milton. It is forecast to remain major hurricane status and expand in size while it approaches the west coast of Florida. It's been a very tight storm, but it's going to get much bigger. How tight? I heard something really crazy today, and I got to share this with you. People are talking that at one point the eye wall was like less than 5 miles wide. I heard 3.7 miles. So what we're talking about like a hurricane that's acting like a wedge tornado out in the middle of the Gulf, so tight with winds pushing 180 plus, maybe much stronger, maybe where that ship that got the 230 reading even stronger, right? So that ship might have been measuring in knots, not miles an hour, so that might be 107 knots. That gives you a good example. This storm is pounding, right? To have that eye wall be so tight and be moving so fast, I mean, it's really pushing the limits of what is possible mathematically in physics. Okay? There's a limit to how far things can actually go given the conditions on planet Earth. There's a limit how hard a hurricane, how deep it can get, how hard it can blow. So extremely tight eye wall. It's the last full day today for Florida residents to get their families and homes ready and evacuate. I mean, you really don't have much time now, folks. The storm, through the night cycling, has reproduced a very clear and persistent eye wall. It's deepening enough that it's probably going to approach Category 5 again today. Took a little break as it cycled. I think some of the interaction from it rubbing against the Yucatan Peninsula, that buzzsaw has been kind of rubbing up against, so that would give it a little less moisture and heat to feed off of. See, it doesn't have that ocean flow pumping straight into it. A little bit of a interaction with the shore there, so that probably weakened it for a little bit. And last night I looked at it before I went to bed and put a post on my Facebook for everyone to see that you couldn't really clearly see the eye wall at that time at about 1 o'clock in the morning or 12:30, whatever it was. I posted that up. So it was undergoing a replacement cycle, we figured at that time, and interacting with the Yucatan, right? Nonetheless, mass evacuations are underway right now. And everybody is leaving Florida. And you have to leave, because if you are along the coastline through the Tampa Bay region, for example, where 10 or 15 foot storm surges might be approaching, there is nowhere to hide. The land is not high enough there for you to safely ride this storm out on the island. And everyone knows that in Florida now. The governments know that. They're doing everything they can to help people get out financially, physically, doing what they can, right? So DeSantis, who turned down hundreds of millions of dollars in funding for climate change preparedness, is at least still, because it was too woke, fucking assholes, he's still doing something today, though. He's still showing that he does care about people over ideology more and more. It seems like the officials in Florida are trying to do everything they can to get it right. And I will recognize that every time. I don't care what party you're on or what your politics or how bad your politics have been for so long if you happen to be in a position of power when this is going on. So everybody is leaving Florida except for Dr. Reed Timmer, the greatest storm chaser of all time as far as I'm concerned. Guy's been blowing my mind literally since I first saw his first video back in 1999 is when I first saw a Reed Timmer video, the one where he would stupidly went underneath the overpass and learned the lesson not to do that. Now we all know, don't go under the overpass in the tornado. So everyone's running from, so it's good because Reed was up in the Carolinas somewhere, up in the Appalachians at his mom's house, which that whole region had been devastated by the last hurricane, by Helene. And Reed was out there, and he was trying to get down yesterday to Florida. I know his team is already down there, but unfortunately for Dr. Reed, he's on the do not rent list for a lot of different car rental companies. So they've... I think the jig is up, Reed. They know that you drive cars into tornadoes sometimes, and no one would rent him a car. It looks like somehow he's got his hands on a car and he's heading down right now. And if you happen to be perusing YouTube today and trying to find the best information possible, if once Reed gives another live stream or something like that, that's the guy you want to check in with. He's obviously a PhD and he's much better at this stuff than I am. And look at that. I started reading off the forecast advisory, the public advisory here. And in the meantime, just in the last 5 minutes, they've released a brand new one already. That's number 14A. So already new information from, this is how fast everything's changing. And there's going to be a lot of change today for everyone to keep up with. And this is a very scary situation. You know, I'm literally shocked and terrified to see this because, you know, a lot of weather nerds are like, they get off on the storm itself, and I sometimes do. I'm known for that. At the same time, I get this deep sense of dread, and one of the reasons why I became what I am is because I felt like, well, I know stuff, and if I don't say it and people die, then I'm a bad person, right? That's what's really going on here is we're trying to help people, okay? You climate-denying conspiracy assholes that have been throwing racist and homophobic and angry trolling comments on my page. What we're actually trying to do here is help people. That's hard for you to understand because you've never helped anybody in your entire fucking life. Okay? Well, here's people who are trying to help people, and they're flying a Hurricane Hunter around. The Air Force Hurricane Hunter has found that Hurricane Milton's intensity has rebounded. Today's the last full day for Florida residents, right? So continuing to move. It's putting about 250 kilometer an hour winds out right now. It's a 923 central pressure, minimal central pressure. Sustained winds 155 miles per hour, 250 kilometers an hour. So here's some of the changes with the advisory. None. These are the watches that are in effect. So the storm surge warning is in effect for the west coast of Florida from Flamingo down to Suwannee River, Charlotte Harbor and Tampa Bay. The east coast of Florida even now getting storm surge warning, including the St. Johns River and St. Mary's River. A hurricane warning is in effect for Celestin to Rio Lagardos. Florida west coast from Bonita Beach northward to the mouth of Suwannee River, including Tampa Bay. Florida east coast from Indian River northward to Ponte Vedra Beach. Storm surge watch is in effect for south of Port Canaveral to Sebastian Inlet. The mouth of St. Mary's River to Edisto Beach. Hurricane watch for Rio Lagardos, Cabo Catash, Dry Tortugas, Lake Okeechobee. Florida west coast from Chokoloskee to south of Bonita Beach. Florida east coast north of Ponte Vedra Beach, Vedra Beach, north of the mouth of St. Mary's River. Tropical storm warnings in effect for Rio Lagardos, Cancun, all the Florida Keys, including Dry Tortugas. Florida Bay, Okeechobee, Flamingo on the west coast, most of the west coast basically, Florida East Coast, Indian River. So these are tropical storm watch in effect. So I mean, if you were in Florida, maybe you're getting all this stuff. Tropical storm watch is in effect. So a storm surge warning means there's a danger of life-threatening inundation. So what happens is the wind is pushing on the water so hard. Have you ever done this? You take a bowl of cereal or something like that, or a bowl of soup. Say a bowl of soup because it's hot, and you take that bowl of soup and it's hot, so you start blowing on it. You could, like I do with my Diggy's Diner mug here, and I haven't put up my weather station yet today. I know. I'm still sick, and it's pounding rain out here in Wells. I don't necessarily want to go out there while I'm sick. Anyways, thank you, Diggy's Diner, for the weather station. It's going up very, very soon, and that segment will be sponsored by Biggie's. But so I got a really hot coffee here, and I'm going to blow across it, and I guess you can't really see because the camera angle blowing across. Now imagine this is a very big cup. Imagine this cup is the size of the Gulf of Mexico, and I'm blowing on it, and you get these ripples, and what happens is you're pushing the water to the other edge of the bowl or the cup, right? Pushing that soup up against the other side. It's stacking up. So that's what's going on when you have this situation. And what concerns me about the hurricane slowing down, we thought that maybe it would have made some more ground by now. We thought maybe it was going to be hitting maybe overnight into maybe tomorrow afternoon in Florida. It's nice if it takes its time getting there because then people have more chance to evacuate, prepare. But the problematic thing about it taking its time is that it's got longer to blow that wind. And it doesn't matter if it's a Category 3 when it approaches land because it will have had time to stack that water up. If that water stacks up 10 to 15 feet high, and you have waves that are pounding much, much higher than that, what you're going to have is entire houses completely underwater on the Florida West Coast. And people will die. Rising water moving inland from the coastline during the next 36 hours. For a depiction of areas at risk, please see the National Weather Service Storm Surge Watch Warnings graphics. Hurricane warning means hurricane conditions are expected somewhere within the warning area. This is usually typical 36 hours before the first occurrence of tropical storm force winds. Tropical storm warning means tropical storm conditions are expected within the warning area in 36 hours. So this just gives you a little bit of an idea. Storm surge watch means there's possibility of life-threatening inundation from rising water during the next 48 hours. Hurricane watch means hurricane conditions are possible within the watch area within 48 hours. The eye of Hurricane Milton is located near latitude 22.5 north, 88.2 west. It's been wobbling during the past few hours. It's wobbling a little bit, and that's why maybe it came a little closer to the Yucatan than we expected or hoped. Its longer-term motion towards the northeast is near 8 miles per hour, so it's really, really moving slowly right now. Reed Timmer yesterday was suggesting it might not even make landfall in Florida until Thursday. A turn toward the northeast with an increased forward speed is expected to begin later today and will continue through Thursday, so it should pick up some speed a little bit today, maybe move a little faster than 8 miles per hour. That's very, very slow. Imagine trying to traverse the entire Gulf Coast of the United States at 8 miles per hour. It would be maddening. The center is likely to make landfall along the west coast of Florida on Wednesday night now and move northeastward across central Florida through Thursday. So a little change in the track and the timing. Not the track so much, but the timing. Aircraft and satellite data indicates the maximum sustained winds have increased to 155 miles per hour, 250 kilometers an hour with higher gusts. So a little bit down from yesterday. It's a Category 4 right now on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Fluctuations in intensity are expected, and this happens with all hurricanes. Milton's forecast to remain an extremely dangerous hurricane when it hits Florida. Hurricane force winds extend outward 45 kilometers from the center, so it's really, really bashing right now. It's down to 923 millibars, right? Hazards affecting land. So the storm surge, it will raise waters by 2 to 4 feet along the north coast of the Yucatan Peninsula. That's not, compared to what we're going to see in Florida. Here, that's not so bad. The combination of a dangerous storm surge and the tide will cause normally dry areas near the coast to be flooded by rising waters. And the timing of the tide and the timing of the hurricane's arrival, if that hurricane arrives during high tide, these numbers will be different, right? So right now, though, what we're looking at, and I think tomorrow there'll be a better picture of this depending on how fast this storm gets moving today. If the storm really picks up some speed and moves quick across the Gulf at some point, then certainly that's what Helene did. If that happens, then maybe these numbers would be sort of like what we're seeing here. We're at Antclaw River and Englewood, 10 to 15 feet. Tampa Bay, 10 to 15 feet. 10 to 15 feet of water. This isn't waves. This is the actual level of the ocean just coming up, 10 to 15 feet. And everywhere else, 6 to 10 feet until you go down even Port Canaveral, 3 to 5 feet there. So large rise in the ocean. The deepest water will occur along the immediate coast near the south of the landfall location, where storm surge will be accompanied by large and dangerous waves. Surge-related flooding depends on the relative timing of the surge and tidal cycle and can vary over short distances. So we're really concerned. We would love to see this hurricane land when the tide goes out. That would be really optimum. And no one has an exact idea yet how fast this hurricane will exactly move and when it will exactly make landfall. Don't have exact details. Like, we don't know exactly the point of landfall, but we're pretty clear now it's headed to Tampa. Every model seems to take it more or less directly at Tampa Bay. It's really as much of a worst case scenario as Tampa Bay could be hoping to achieve. Could see localized rainfall of 5 to 12 inches. Totals up to 18 maybe through northern portions of Florida Peninsula. I think a lot of that rain is going to go north of Tampa Bay. Yeah, that stretch of Florida, the rainfall will bring risk of life-threatening flash flooding in the urban areas especially. So not only are you going to have the ocean levels coming up, you're going to have incredible amount of rain. Luckily, Florida's not, crazy full of hills the way the Carolinas are to have some of that kind of flooding. However, because it's so flat in Florida, there's not going to be a lot of places to escape from it. There is places where you're 50 feet above sea level and whatnot in Florida. Sure. Milton will produce rainfall totals 2 to 4 inches across the Florida Keys on Thursday. Tropical storm conditions are possible in the watch area on the Georgia and South Carolina coasts on Thursday. So we're concerned about that. Extreme northwestern Bahamas on Thursday could see tropical storm conditions. Tornadoes are possible over central and southern Florida beginning late tonight and continuing through Wednesday night. So in advance of the storm, some of the outer bands of clouds are going to be moving through, convecting clouds, and they're going to possibly start creating thunderstorms over top of Florida in advance of the storm. We're concerned about that. Surf swells generated by Milton are expected to continue to affect much of the Gulf Coast for the next day or two. And you can more or less extrapolate how that's possible. You have this moisture out well ahead of the storm that's some of it quite deep, some of it able to make itself into thunderstorms. Some of those thunderstorms will be quite severe because of the nature of this hurricane. So you can see it's quite interacting with land still right now at this time. But it does have a very clear and persistent eye wall. You can see right there, not exactly symmetrical in this image. Maybe that's part of that warbling. And you can see the buzzsaw is really bypassed, although the storm is very small. This is not a large storm right now. We know it's going to probably enlarge as it comes across the Gulf. It'll probably, as it weakens, it will get much bigger. And you can kind of just see by, these pressure lines, by these isobars, how large do you think it could get? So maybe the intensity will come down a little bit, but the actual size of it will make things problematic in itself. And this is much like what happened with Hurricane Katrina, although these are quite different storms in a lot of ways. It's heading to an area that can't afford to take massive amounts of storm surge and flooding. And it's going to more or less do that same thing where it's going to, motor across at Category 5 and then at some point weaken before it hits shore, but in doing so expand. And that will not give any benefit to storm surge, and it will also mean a very wide area is subjected to the storms, right? Sequence of microwave images and recent Hurricane Hunter observations suggests Milton's completed a eye wall replacement overnight. That's exactly what we thought was happening. A new eye wall is contracted down from 22 nautical miles to just 12 nautical miles in diameter. Very small eye wall. It doesn't appear that the hurricane weakened much after the eye wall replacement. It could have rebounded with the other eye wall contraction. Dropson released by the NOAA P3 Orion Hurricane Hunter aircraft in the northeastern eye wall recently measured an average wind speed of 156 knots in the lowest 150 meters of the sounding. That equates to an intensity of 130 knots. The latest pressure reported by the plane is 929 millibar. Well, we know this has changed because now there's a 14A coming out, so this will be a little bit changed by the next. So already what I'm saying is going to be out of date. The recent aircraft fixes show that that's how fast everything's changing right now, right? Everything's changing so fast right now that people are going to be making videos And by the time the video hits, there's going to be new data, new details coming out. And that's what we're trying our best to keep up. Milton's turned a bit leftward and is moving toward the northeast at 8 knots. It's forecast to turn northeastward and begin accelerating later today as it moves between a trough digging into the Gulf of Mexico and a ridge over the greater Antilles. So there's sort of the weak storms that were preceding it ahead are sort of what's helping pull it along in that direction, right? The track guidance is honed in a landfall on the west central coast of Florida sometime Wednesday night now. It's critical to remember that even at 36 to 48 hours away, the National Hurricane Center's track forecast can be off by an average of 60 to 70 nautical miles, which means we still can't pinpoint an exact landfall location. No one knows exactly for sure, especially if the hurricane wobbles as it approaches the coast. That'll make it even more difficult to pinpoint the exact. But we have more or less a general area. And, in a storm this big, even if it happens 30 miles down the road from you where it comes ashore, you're going to get walloped, right? So it's almost academic at this point where that exact location is going to be, seeing as every model seems to take it more or less into the Tampa Bay area. After landfall, Milton's forecast to cross Florida and come over the Atlantic waters on Thursday. It will likely just jettison itself straight eastward. I was saying yesterday I'm concerned that any forecast track that would bring it to the north, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, and none of the spaghetti plots seem to have any of the models now showing it do that. So we got a better idea that's going to just pass straight through Florida and go eastward. It's expected to maintain major hurricane strength while it moves across the Gulf and approaches the west coast of Florida. Vertical shear is expected to set in 24 hours, but even this causes some weakening. It will not be enough to keep Milton from being an extremely dangerous hurricane when it reaches shore. Additionally, the first stages of extratropical transition may be underway as Milton is reaching the coast, which could impart some baroclinic energy and slow the rate of weakening. The NHC intensity forecast is close to the top end of the model, which includes GFS and ECMWF models, since these models should have a better handle on the potential positive trough interaction. Milton's wind field is expected to expand as it approaches Florida. In fact, the official forecast shows the hurricane and tropical storm force winds roughly doubling in size by the time it makes landfall. So this is going to be perhaps twice as big as it is right now. It's worth emphasizing that this is a very serious situation, and residents in Florida should closely follow orders from the emergency, and I think everyone knows that now. Yeah, let's keep this storm in perspective. Look at the track, right? So Friday at 4 o'clock, there was some thunderstorms here, and they gave it a 90% chance of forming a hurricane. Now, by Saturday, it was getting close to that, became a tropical storm. Sunday at 11 in the morning, local time, it reached 130 kilometers an hour, dropped down to 987 hectopascals, and it became a Category 1 hurricane at that point. It moved for the next 24 hours before becoming a tropical Category 5, which blasted at one point 278 kilometer an hour winds at 909 hectopascals, dropped even further down to 901. It says, I think that we did see 898.6 at some point yesterday. So the hurricane hunters seem to indicate that. Today, 242 kilometer an hour winds. Tomorrow, still looking at Category 4 as it approaches the coast, right? So we've had this talk that maybe it's going to be a Category 3 when it approaches the coast. But hey, Helene still intensified right before landfall and became a Category 4. So I have every reason to believe right from the onset, personally, that this storm was going to be a Cat 4 when it hit into the United States. That was my belief all along. And you can see the track of this hurricane now really coming, like they think it's going to come straight into Tampa Bay itself. And if this happens, the amount of water that's going to get pushed up through St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Tampa, Bradenton, Sarasota, Venice Beach, these are places that are going to be taking a lot of storm surge. These places will be underwater. Anybody who doesn't leave is at risk of dying. There is absolutely no sitting there along the coast and having a normal day. It's not happening. You need to get out, and I think everybody in the States knows that right now. But we're really concerned if this happens, if this track happens. The strongest winds and probably largest surf will probably hit into these areas in the south, Sarasota, Venice, and whatnot, North Port. So we're concerned about that. If the storm does give a little bit further of a track to the north, then it's going to really help feed even more water into the bay itself. So we're concerned about this track. And really, it's really academic if it hits here. Either way, a matter of feet might not make much difference by the time you're over 10 feet of storm surge, right? this is more or less what we expect to see Hurricane Milton do this week. Take that little adjustment to the north as it comes into that little trough that it's trailing in, and slam in as a very deep, very powerful hurricane straight into the west coast of Florida. Pretty much the worst case scenario you could probably hope for. It's bad. It's really bad. And then transitioning probably to an extratropical low after that. I don't think it's beyond the possibility that it re-attains current hurricane status, but models don't seem to show that. They seem to think it's going to just be a tropical low and move on out. So here's hoping for anybody who's on the other side of the Florida that that's exactly what happens, that this thing just sort of dies off and that's the end of her. And this is favorable, compared to the last one, which really went into the Carolinas, and then it got hooked around this low pressure that was here, and that tracked it out and around and kind of made it loop in that area more or less, that collection of moisture, and it just rained in Appalachia, poured. So, it's bad for Florida. It's very bad for Florida. Okay, these are storms that are doing things that no one's really ever seen storms do before. I'll give you some examples here. Before we do look at some of that unbelievable stuff, this isn't a man-made hurricane machine. It's not possible to do that, folks. It's funny that you tell me I'm scared. You're scared of climate change. What, are you scared? What, are you scared? And then you make up some ridiculous shit that's way more terrifying than, well, humans are having an impact on the environment. That seems pretty realistic. That's easy to believe. Oh, of course, humans can have an impact on the environment. Well, this guy, he says, hurricane machine is making category 4 and 5. This is obviously a joke meme. But, this is how stupid what some of you people are saying actually is to me, okay? Weather Service in Tampa Bay saying, if Milton stays course, it will be the most powerful hurricane to hit Tampa Bay in over 100 years. No one in the area has ever experienced a hurricane this strong before. While it was at Category 5 strength yesterday, the temperature of the cloud tops reached minus 80 Celsius. 80 below. That's how cold it was up there. That storm is punching so tall. It's convecting and growing so big and so powerful and pushing so high up into the atmosphere that this thing is reaching minus 80 Celsius at the very top of the clouds, right? The strongest storms we've seen in BC all year barely hit below minus 55. We saw some thunderstorms that were absolutely punching into the stratosphere, and even they didn't reach, I didn't see anything below 60 that I thought of for sure this year. We saw lots of 50s and 55s during those most prolific, large supercellular thunderstorm outbursts, right? So this is down in Florida. This isn't up in the Caribbean Mountains. This is down in Florida. This is down on the Gulf Coast. That's how strong this hurricane is, how tall it is. It's pushing that big, that tall. It's horrific. So yesterday it was at 911 millibars and falling, and it was the 5th strongest storm. Well, if it did get 898.6, and that's confirmed, that'll make it the 2nd strongest storm ever in the Gulf of Mexico. So desperate situation in Florida. I've said too much already, everybody. I hope this helps, gives you a better picture. And if you got people in Florida, find out what you can do to help them. Find out. And if you are in Florida, make sure, and you can't get out, make sure that your cell phone, in case you run out of batteries and whatnot, make sure the message when people call you says where you are. Worst case scenario, everybody. Terrifying. Really bad. I wish there was anything I could do for you all. I wish there was anything. This is the best I got from up here in Canada. Okay, hit like, share, subscribe, everybody. We'll see you next time. Thanks so very much. Be safe out there, and good luck, Florida.